Okay, let's take a look at this. So we developed this technique. Oh gosh, back in September, October, right around there. We've been using the installed Ckeditor for XPages, Ckeditor 3.6.2, I believe. It's been a while since I checked the version, but it's a stream of three, and basically that version isn't really even certified for mobile device use, iPad use, etc. But that is the one that's supported from within XPages, and it works fine. You can swap out the Dojo one to go backwards if you want. That one works okay for iPad use, but in our case, we needed to get something a little more full fidelity than the Dojo editor for a variety of reasons, but basically we just needed it to work a little bit better, and there were some problems with the way tables get edited manually by the user using the iPad on the Ckeditor 3, etc. So blah blah blah. In the end, we needed to basically have a better Ckeditor experience for the iPad users. What we ended up doing was taking a look at Ckeditor 4 and determining that the folks at Ckeditor have said, well, it's not really officially supported for mobile device, but it works pretty doggone good. And so that was better than what we had originally, and so we decided to deploy or look at how to deploy Ckeditor 4 just for the iPad clients. So in our application, if you access the application using any browser, we use the standard Ckeditor that ships with XPages, 8.5 to 5.3, 9, 901, that stuff, and it works just great. Works like a champ. However, when you access the application, oh, and by the way, that also works fine on like a Microsoft Surface. And I believe it's been a while since we've tested Android tablets, but Android's support of that editor comes in and out. But I believe it's consistently been kind of working. So as far as I know, it still works on an Android tablet. But the iPad tablet thing was an issue. So we took a look at it, and we said, all right, if somebody logs into our application and they're using an iPad, then and only then are we going to display the Ckeditor 4 to them, and then they're going to be able to edit their content through the Ckeditor 4, and life will be good. The information that gets stored from a Ckeditor is essentially HTML, which needs to be converted into MIME content when it's stored in a notes document field. So our generic high-level process is you use the iPad, we show you the content, it's in HTML inside the Ckeditor, you do all your editing, you change whatever you need to do. When you save it, we take that content, convert it into MIME, and put it into a regular, rich text field that's MIME. Once it's in MIME, you can view that data using the old Ckeditor, so you get back and forth between whatever different clients you have, or if they open it back up with the original iPad editor, it's going to be the same. So we put together this technique to basically accomplish this. So the other preface I'll say to this is our needs were not, how shall I say, this is not a solution that's going to get you to attaching files, embedding images, etc., which are things that we didn't need in our application. In our application, our primary need is for people to be able to format text, doing the basic kind of formatting, including tabling, and be able to edit that text reasonably well on an iPad, and then go from there. So that was our goals, which are fairly minimal. I know relative to what most people want. The other situation here is that you're gonna, and this might stop many of you from using this solution, is that we actually ended up having to install the newest Ckeditor on our server. So that was the only way to get around, at least that we could find, only way to get around a certain kind of a sort of a roadblock that I'll show you here in a second. So that's the preface. Let me show you how we did it. We're going to do this in steps. So step one is just basically getting the Ckeditor to work. And in order to do that, you're going to need to do a couple things, or this is how we did it. There's other ways to do it. The first thing is we went to the ckeditor.com website, went to the download link over here, and for this demo I just took exactly the standard package, just lock, stock, and barrel, whatever the standard download was, took it, put it onto our server. And so I've got a screenshot here of where it actually went on our server. Basically, you can see right in here, this is a standard Lotus Domino server install. Program files, IBM, Domino, data, Domino, HTML, and then we put together the, I just made a little folder called JS, and then the exact download from the Ckeditor website, I just unzipped it and dropped the file right in there. So no change to the standard Ckeditor deployment, and I just dropped it into the Domino's HTML folder. You're going to need to adjust that however you need to if that's not where your root is. Sometimes, like on our website, we have a different root than HTML, but so you would have to put it into a different spot. But basically, it goes on the server, and I'll explain why we had to put it on the server here in just a second. The other thing is, we don't want to save those changes. The other thing is that we're going to use the Jquery Adapter because we use Jquery a fair amount in our application. So you also, in our case, we went and downloaded the Jquery distribution. We ended up using the 1.11 distribution because that's the last one that actually supports IE 6, 7, or 8. If you can see down here, they basically talk about the Jquery 2.x doesn't support IE 6, 7, or 8. And as much as we would like to stop people from using IE8, we've been unsuccessful at that. So pretty much we were just using the Jquery one. And I just downloaded the minimized version of Jquery, and in that case, I actually put it into the NSF. So you need the Jquery and the Ckeditor install. So in terms of where do the files go, so I already showed you where the JavaScript, the Ckeditor files go on the server. Here in our application, though, we went ahead and put a JS folder inside of the application itself, and I do actually have the Ckeditor distribution here, which I'll use to demonstrate. So you're really not going to end up putting it here permanently, at least unless you find a solution to what the problem that I'm going to show you. But the other thing is, the most important thing is that I've got this Jquery 1.11.0.min.js, which is again the standard vanilla download from Jquery. In addition, there is a custom scripts JS file which I've got in the application. You'll need to install that in your application, or at least you'll be able to see how we did it here. There's only 2 functions in that, and I'll show them to you here in just a second. So the standard install is go get Ckeditor, go get Jquery min, just the basic Jquery. You're going to need some kind of functionality from the custom scripts JS that I'm going to show you. The Ckeditor needs to go on the server, and the other files need to go into your NSF. Now, let me show you this, putting it together. In this step 1 XPage, the way the Ckeditor works is some HTML gets output. So it looks around for a text area element, and then you can apply the Ckeditor. You can say, hey, yo, Ckeditor, convert this element into a Ckeditor object. And so that's what we've done here. In our computed field, we are actually just generating HTML. So if I look at the HTML that comes out of this, it's pretty straightforward. Pretty much all this thing is doing is saying, hey, generate a text area. I just hard-coded a class, which we will use to identify the object to the Ckeditor. I've built a name and an ID attribute here. I had to take this technique out of our production application and sort of massage it to work in a much simpler version. In our version in production, these are variable names. So for a couple of reasons I can talk about at the end, but basically that's what I'm building. This is just standard HTML output, and then the way the text area works is it gets a default value from some text, and then you close off the text area. And in the design of this, you can see, well, it's just outputs HTML, it's escaped, etc., that kind of a thing. So you're going to need some HTML to basically be assigned the Ckeditor. If I look at the source here, I can see a couple of things that involve the scripts. First one is I've got a script block here that says, okay, load up the files from the NSF. So you'll notice that there's no slash right here. So this is what I'm talking about right there. There's no slash. And then we start off with JS, and I've got that jQuery min, and then I've got the custom scripts, which I'll talk to you about. And it says load up those, and then these other two, the last two, are actually the required script files for the Ckeditor. They're actually coming from the server itself. So it starts with a slash, and we'll look at the server's root, the web server's root, and pull those files from there. So those are the required JavaScript files you'll need. Then you've got the output where it's going to output HTML. And then finally down here I've got one last script block that says, hey, when the document's ready, and this is all pretty old school for those of you who are kind of looking for some cool style, but basically we're just saying, hey, using the jQuery stuff to say, hey, if the document's ready, go ahead and run this prep Ckeditor's function. The prep Ckeditor's function is actually in this custom scripts JavaScript file, and all the prep Ckeditor's function does is look at every element that has the specified class and tell it to turn it into a Ckeditor. And then we'll talk about this one later. So basically in step 1 page, we've attached the right JavaScript files. We've got a computed field that generates straight HTML that represents the text area, and then once the page loads, we run a separate JavaScript that just says, hey, go find this element and turn it into a Ckeditor object. So let's take a look at that. If I go over here into ye old browser, this is that step 1 XPage. So I'm running this on a server. It's a test server that's internal, and when I open up the step1.xsp, this is exactly what I expect to see. And at this point, the Ckeditor is working. You can do all kinds of different things with it. You can make it bold. It does exactly what you think it should do. And again, this is the standard, nothing's configured version of the Ckeditor. Now, I do want to show you something. If I look at the information that gets sent here, let's just say look at the net and refresh this. You'll notice down here that there's a Ckeditor JS kind of a thing where it's asking for that. There's custom scripts, etc. Matter of fact, I'm gonna do this from scratch so that there's nothing cached. And I'm looking at this, and my point is, hey, look, Ma, there's all the files are getting loaded the right way. But if you switch this source here so that now it's pulling the Ckeditor JavaScript files from the NSF. So by doing that, it's now looking in this Ckeditor folder right here for those files. And you do a full refresh over in the old browser, what you're going to see is you're going to see this, which clearly is breaking it. There's no Ckeditor up here. So what you see down here is that there's a little token value that's getting attached to the config.js. The config.js file is actually what tells the Ckeditor, hey, here's all of your configuration values, and it needs that to start itself. And it's also looking for, tried to download a couple other files where they've added onto the download path this $T equals some little code, and that will change essentially when you restart your server. Now, as best I could discover back in September, October, basically the XPages engine, the Dojo, the adapters that they've got built in, whenever it comes across this config, it basically tries to, or it automatically attaches this to the path, and it's a bit of a security measure so that that we know that the actual Ckeditor, the one that's installed with XPages, is valid. It hasn't been changed, etc. So what I had to do was I found that I was not able to get around that or disable that little piece without spending an inordinate amount of time and maybe breaking some other things in XPages. If you just make it download those files from the web server, in other words, they're being statically loaded, they're not being called up from the XPages engine. So we'll go back in here into step 1.xsp. When you do that, it just brings it up normal. It just says, oh, okay, well, these aren't coming through. So I'll just do a refresh here. And again, you'll see there's nothing that's failed to load. So, you know, I'm fully expecting, and matter of fact, I'm hoping that somebody has a solution to that. But one of the challenges that you run into, or at least we ran into, was that the CK editor that's built into the XPage engine is got some fairly tightly integrated and low-level tweaks to it that you can't really, you got to kind of get away from that or get out of it. Matter of fact, here's another little side note. What we found was because of that little thing that I just showed you, it's actually impossible to run the standard CK editor, rich text editor that XPages provides you in the same XPage when you're using the CK editor 4. So you have to pick one or the other, because as soon as you use the one that's in the XPages, the JavaScript wants to take over the DOM and just do its own stuff. So that's kind of the big caveat as well. Alright, so that's all it takes to get it all working. And so attach the, download the right files, put them in the right place, put them in the XPage, make sure that they actually load correctly, and then output the HTML, and then you do a little function that just says, hey, load up the CK editor. And if you load your page and you get this, then you're a winner. Alright, step 2 is next.